The front door had already been open when I pushed it, like someone had waited for me and then stepped aside. The hallway air had smelled of wet drywall and burnt plastic. Inside, the apartment had been bright even though the curtains had been closed. Every ceiling light had been on. They had hummed in a steady line, like they had been wired to a single switch that I had not touched. Water had run across the floor in a thin sheet. It had carried bits of white paint and gray dust. The living room wall had been peeled in long strips, not ripped in anger but cut clean, like someone had used a blade and taken time. The hardwood had been gouged in straight rows. It had looked like writing, but I could not read it. The smell had been wrong for an empty place. It had smelled like warm breath. I stepped forward and my shoe had pressed on glass. I looked down. All the framed pictures she had hung had been smashed. The shards had been laid in a circle around the center of the room. The circle had been too neat. In the middle, a dining chair had faced the front door, placed like a seat for me. On the chair there had been my own spare key ring. I had kept that ring in my office drawer. I had never brought it here. I moved closer, keeping my back to the wall. The chair seat had been wet, but the key ring had been dry. That had made no sense. I saw why a second later. Above the chair, the smoke detector had been missing. In its place, a small black lens had been set into the ceiling. A thin wire had run along the seam, painted the same color as the plaster. The lens had pointed straight down at the chair. It had been watching the spot where I would stand. I forced myself to look away and went to the bedroom. The mattress had been slit open from end to end. The stuffing had been pulled out and stuffed into the closet like a body. The closet door had been shut, but the handle had been tied with a cord so it could not be opened without cutting it. The cord had been the same kind I used for the window blinds in my own apartment. I had felt my throat tighten. She had touched my things. In the kitchen, every cabinet door had been open. Plates had been stacked on the floor in careful piles, unbroken. The refrigerator had been empty but clean, wiped like a display. On the counter, a legal pad had sat beside a pen. The pad had been turned to a page with my name written at the top, not printed. It had been written in the same looping style as her rent checks. Under my name there had been one line. It had said that I had been predictable. It had said I would come here first. It had said I would want proof. I walked to the small hall closet where I kept building documents during renovations. I had installed a metal lockbox there months ago for leases and keys when contractors came and went. The lockbox door had been open. The inside had been empty. The folder that should have held the signed lease copy had been gone. My copy. The one I had needed for court. I checked again, like the paper could appear if I stared hard enough. Only dust had clung to the corners, with a single clean rectangle where the folder had been. I backed out into the living room. The lens above the chair still had been aimed at me. I noticed a second lens then at the edge of the bookshelf at eye level. It had been framed by broken wood, like the shelf had been cut to fit it. I saw a third, hidden behind the cracked mirror by the entry. The mirror had been shattered except for one clear piece, and in that clear piece I had seen myself standing there, staring. It had felt like the apartment had stared back. My phone had buzzed in my hand. I had not realized I had taken it out. I had opened the camera to document everything for the police and for my own records. I had already decided I would put her face online. $20,000 did not vanish. I had raised the phone and tried to take a photo of the chair and the key ring, but the screen had flickered. A notification had slid down from the top. It had come from her social account, the one that had shown posts from an overseas city for 3 days. The alert had said she had started a live update. I stared at it, then tapped it without thinking. The feed loaded in silence. The first image had been my own living room from above, from the ceiling lens, looking straight down at me as I stood under it. Under the video, new words had appeared, typing one by one in real time, and they had said that I had finally arrived. I had shut the live feed and the screen had kept showing a frozen image of my own head from above. My hands had shaken as I walked out. In the hallway, I had heard the same low hum from the ceiling lights behind the door, like the apartment had stayed awake after I left. I had called the police, but my voice had sounded small. I had also called my building super to meet me outside. I had not wanted to be alone in that corridor again. An officer had stepped in with a flashlight and had come back out with a flat face. He had called it vandalism and theft. He had asked for her full name and date of birth. I had given what I had from the application. He had typed it and then had paused. He had asked if I had ever met her in person. I had said yes. He had asked how many times. I had not liked how he looked at me when I answered. I had gone straight to my office to pull the rest of her file. I had kept copies of her pay stubs, bank statements, and references. I had also kept the lease in a fire box. That copy had been mine, not the one she had stolen from the apartment. The fire box had been locked. I had opened it and found the lease folder there, but it had felt lighter than it should have. When I flipped through, key pages had been missing. The signature page had been gone. The page with the guarantor clause had been gone. Someone had opened my box and had taken only what would hurt me. By evening, I had sat across from my lawyer with a stack of photos and screenshots. I had shown him the live post that had watched me in the apartment. He had not cared about that part. He had cared about address and jurisdiction. He had said she had left the country. He had said civil court had meant little if she stayed overseas. He had said I could win on paper and still get nothing. He had said the cost of chasing her could exceed the loss. He had called it a trap that often closed on landlords who expected the system to fix it. I had told him I would not let it go. I had told him about the missing pages from the lease. He had asked who else had access to my office. He had asked it like he had already suspected the answer. He had said we could file a criminal report for the theft, but extradition would not happen for rent. He had said the best outcome would be a judgment I could not collect. The money had pressed on my chest as I drove back to the building. $20,000 had already been gone. Now the damage had added more. Water, floors, walls, wiring. Insurance had requested a police report and proof of forced entry. There had been none. The door had not been kicked. The lock had not been drilled. The company had talked like it had been a tenant dispute, not a burglary. They had made it sound like I had invited the loss inside. I had started gathering evidence like it had been a second job that did not end. I had copied every rent payment record. I had saved every message she had sent, every call log, every email. I had downloaded her social posts and the comments. I had recorded the live feed replay before she deleted it. The file had saved with a time stamp that matched the moment I stood in her living room, but the location tag had shown a foreign city. The two things had existed at once, and the platform had accepted it without question. I had pulled building camera footage from the week she had left. On the day she had claimed she had flown out, the lobby camera had shown her walking in with two men I had never seen. They had carried tool bags. They had looked up at the ceiling cameras and had smiled like they knew where my blind spots had been. Minutes later, the cameras had gone to black for exactly 12 minutes. When the feed returned, she had walked out alone with a small suitcase, not the heavy bags she had posted online. I had paid for a flight record search. It had taken hours and too much money, but I had needed something real. The first result had matched her name. Then the report had shown the name had been attached to two different passport numbers. I had asked the service to dig deeper. They had sent back a list of bookings under slight changes, different middle initials, different spellings, and different birth dates that stayed within the same week. One identity had flown out. Another identity had flown in. The dates had overlapped. I had checked her application again and had noticed details I had ignored. The employer letter had been on a real company letterhead, but the phone number had not matched their main line. The bank statement had shown deposits that looked normal, but the account had been opened only weeks before. The reference had answered my call too quickly, like he had been waiting. I had felt sick as I realized the person I had rented to had been a mask built from other people. That night I had sat at my desk with the lease file spread out like a body on a table. I had stared at the missing pages and at my own handwritten notes in the margin. I had remembered what I had written during negotiation, a private line I never shared. I had written it to remind myself not to bend again. I had written it in anger, not for anyone else to read. My phone had lit up with a text from an unknown number. There had been no greeting. There had been one sentence. It had quoted my private line from the lease file word for word, including the spelling mistake I had made. The text that quoted my private note had proved one thing. Someone had been inside my office. Someone had read my file. I had sat in the dark with my phone in my hand and had understood that the normal path was dead. No court. No closure. If I had stayed quiet, she would have stayed a ghost with my money in her pocket. If I had spoken loud enough, she would have had to look back. I had opened my laptop and had built a page with her name at the top. I had told myself it was for other landlords. I had told myself it was a warning. I had not admitted that it was also punishment. I had posted the photos of the apartment first. The wet floors, the cut walls, the missing detector and the black lens in the ceiling. I had posted the invoices from my contractor with exact amounts. I had posted the rent ledger with the last payment circled. I had posted the screenshot of her social account and the live feed frame that had shown my head from above. I had written a timeline in plain words: when she had applied, when she had moved in, when the payments had stopped, when she had claimed she had left the country, when I had found the apartment open and watching. I had left out my fear and had written only facts, but my hands had still trembled as I typed. I had ended with one sentence. I had asked anyone who recognized her to contact me. The page had not stayed small. It had spread like smoke. A housing forum had reposted it within minutes. Then a local news account had shared it as a thread. People had started replying with their own stories. Some had said they had seen the same face under a different name. Some had said they had dealt with the same pattern: clean paperwork, fast answers, a sudden exit. Others had said I was a rich man crying over money. They had called me cruel. They had said tenants had suffered more than landlords ever did. The comments had turned into a fight that had nothing to do with me, but my phone had kept buzzing as if it had. I had watched the numbers climb. Views, shares, saves. The algorithm had rewarded anger. Each time someone argued, the story had moved higher. People had asked for proof she existed. I had posted the application photo. I had blurred parts, but not enough. I had wanted her to be seen. I had wanted her to feel what it was like to be hunted by strangers who would never get tired. A message request had appeared from an account with no picture and a name made of random letters. It had said I had been brave. It had said she had deserved it. Then it had added a detail that had made my stomach drop. It had described the inside of my office. It had mentioned the fire box in the lower drawer. It had mentioned the missing signature page like it had been held in the sender's hand. I had demanded to know who it was. The account had not answered. It had started typing, then had stopped. Then the chat had refreshed and the entire message had been gone, like it had never existed. I had stared at the blank screen and had felt the same cold pressure I had felt under the ceiling lens in her apartment. I had refreshed my own page and had seen edits I had not made. At first I had thought I had clicked the wrong tab. Then I had seen a new line added under the timeline. It had been written in my style, short and direct. It had said I would keep posting until she paid. It had ended with a period that I never used. I had tried to remove it and the site had asked me to log in again. My password had been rejected. The reset email had been sent, but it had not arrived. I had checked my social accounts. The same thing had been happening there. Password errors. New login alerts from far places. A notification had said my phone number had been removed from my profile. Another had said my recovery email had been changed. I had felt sweat on my palms as I realized she had not only watched me, she had moved through my accounts like she had lived there. Still, the campaign had grown on its own. People had copied my posts and had reposted them elsewhere. They had made videos with my photos. They had read my timeline aloud like a script. They had said her name over and over until it had lost meaning and had become a sound. By midnight, her name had been on a trending list beside celebrity gossip and breaking news. It had looked wrong, like her presence had infected the feed. Then a stranger had sent me a direct message on a new account, one I had never used before and had never linked to my name. The message had been one line. It had said, "This is her new address." For a second, an address had been there, complete down to the apartment number and a building code. I had reached to screenshot it. The message had vanished while my finger had still been on the screen. The deleted address had stayed in my head like a burning spot. I had not been able to prove it had existed, and that had made me furious. If she could erase words before I could capture them, then I had needed something that could not be erased so easily. I had wanted her name to become a wall she could not climb over. I had wanted the internet to remember for me. I had searched her name the next morning. My thread had been high for a few hours, then it had slipped under other noise. Some posts had called her a scammer. Others had called me a cruel landlord. A few had claimed the whole story had been fake. That had been the worst part. Lies had started growing around my own facts, and the search page had mixed them all like it had not cared who got hurt. I had bought a web domain with her name in it. I had paid extra for privacy, but I had not trusted it. I had built a simple site with plain pages that loaded fast. I had copied my timeline and had added scanned invoices and the police report number. I had uploaded photos in small size with clear file names. I had repeated her name in the text until it had felt dirty to type. I had created a page titled for landlords, another for journalists, another for anyone who had rented to her under a different name. I had read guides on how search engines worked. I had followed them like instructions from a cold doctor. I had asked other sites to link to mine. I had posted in landlord forums, tenant forums, local neighborhood boards, and review sites where renters warned each other about buildings. I had placed the same link again and again, always the same words, always the same spelling, so the machines would learn the pattern. I had submitted the site to search tools that promised faster indexing, like I had been registering a death. The results had started to change within a day. Her name had brought my site up higher each time I checked. It had pushed down her travel photos and her happy posts. It had pushed down the accounts that claimed she had a new job overseas. When my page had hit the top result, I had felt relief for 1 second. Then I had felt something else. It had felt like a door had opened and something had noticed me through it. I had emailed reporters who covered housing and scams. I had attached my photos and my ledger. I had kept my words tight and careful. I had asked for help exposing a renter who had left unpaid rent and staged destruction. 2 journalists had replied. One had asked for an interview. Another had asked for her passport number and current address. I had not had those. I had offered what I did have, and I had felt ashamed at how desperate I had sounded. A week later, a small online paper had published a short piece. My name had been in it, so had my building address. Comments had appeared under the article within minutes. Some had called me a hero. Some had called me a predator. One had claimed I had forced her out. Another had claimed I had changed the locks and kept her belongings. None of that had been true. Still, the search engines had treated the article like confirmation and had copied it into previews and caches. I had tried to lock down my accounts. I had changed passwords twice a day. I had turned on extra login checks. I had printed backup codes and had hidden them in a drawer at home. Even then, strange things had happened. A post on a forum had appeared under my username at 3 in the morning while I had been awake and staring at the ceiling. It had said I had offered to erase the story if she paid me in cash. It had included a meeting place and a time. I had never written it. I had never even thought it. But the post had sat there with my account name beside it like a signed confession. By the time I saw it, people had already screenshotted it. Replies had already called me corrupt. When I deleted it, someone had reposted the screenshot and had said I was covering my tracks. I had logged into my own site and had found new sentences inside my timeline. They had been placed between my lines, smooth and clean, as if I had written them. They had described parts of the apartment I had never posted. They had described a stain under the bedroom closet door, dark and wide. They had described a smell behind the tied handle, like spoiled meat. I had never opened that closet. I had never told anyone about the cord from my blinds. Yet the site now claimed I had found something worse and had hidden it. Then I had scrolled down and had seen a new section added under my name. It had been titled My Mistakes. It had listed details I had never shared with anyone, not even my lawyer. It had mentioned a tenant settlement from years ago. It had mentioned a complaint I had paid to make disappear. It had used exact dates and amounts pulled from files I kept in a locked cabinet. When I tried to remove it, the page refreshed by itself. The text changed again while I watched. A final line appeared at the bottom, in the same simple font as everything else. It said that I had lied about her, and that soon everyone would see what I really was. The day my site had accused me of lying, the comments had changed tone like a switch had been flipped. People had stopped asking for proof. They had started calling me a hunter. They had said I had chased a woman across borders for money. They had said my posts had sounded like a threat. They had copied my photos and had circled parts of them, then had claimed I had planted cameras in her home. They had said I had staged the ruined apartment to frame her. A thread had appeared on a forum I had never used. It had been titled with my full name. Someone had posted my building address first, then had added a map pin. Another user had posted my business filings. A third had posted a photo of my front door from the street, taken at night. I had stared at that image and had tried to remember if I had ever seen that person outside. The post had called it accountability. It had asked others to help identify where I slept. By evening, the thread had grown into a list. My phone number had appeared, then my email, then my home address. The home address had not been public. I had never listed it anywhere. I had felt cold as I read the exact unit number and the entry code for the door. Someone had also written the name of my mother with her old address in Queens. Under that, a stranger had posted a sentence that promised a visit. My phone had started ringing after midnight. The first caller had stayed silent. I had heard breathing and a soft clicking sound like nails on glass. The second caller had played a recording of a woman laughing. The laugh had repeated in a loop, the same 3 seconds, too clean to be real. The third caller had spoken in a calm voice and had told me my lobby camera angle. He had described the blind spot near the mailbox. He had asked if I had liked being watched. I had stopped answering, but the calls had not stopped. Voicemails had filled my inbox, each one shorter than the last. One had said my name once, slow and careful. Another had said pay her back, even though she had owed me. A third had played a sound that had made my stomach turn. It had been the same low hum I had heard in the apartment, steady and close, like a light fixture above my head. In the morning, I had forced myself to go to the building. I had needed to check the door and the cameras. I had needed to see if anyone had been inside. The lobby had looked normal from the sidewalk. Then I had stepped closer and had seen paper taped to the glass door at eye level. It had been a printed screenshot of my own post, the one with her name and the ruined apartment photos. Someone had drawn a thick black X over her face. Under it, in neat block letters, someone had written my name and the word liar. Below that, a second printout had been taped with fresh, clear tape. It had been a screenshot of the doxing thread, with my home address highlighted. The tape edges had still been clean. Whoever had placed it had done it recently. I had looked down the sidewalk and had seen nothing. I had looked at the lobby camera and had noticed the angle had shifted by a few degrees. It had pointed slightly higher than before, as if someone had adjusted it to capture my face. I had gone to the back office and had pulled the camera footage. The file for last night had been corrupted. The time stamps had jumped in gaps. At 2:14 a.m. the lobby had been empty. At 2:15 a.m. the screenshots had been on the door. No person had appeared between frames. The door had not even opened. I had called the police again and had insisted someone had trespassed. An officer had arrived and had read the papers on the door without expression. He had asked about my online posts. He had asked if I had contacted the tenant directly. I had told him I had not. I had shown him the thread and the calls. He had taken notes and had told me to document everything. His calm had made me more afraid than anger would have. Before he left, he had lowered his voice. He had told me the threats did not match one person. He had said the phone calls had come from different carriers in different regions. He had said some had come through services that hid the source, but others had not. He had looked at me and had said the same sentence twice, like he needed me to accept it. He had said the threats had come from multiple countries. The officer had left, and the lobby had felt louder after the door closed. I had stared at the printed screenshots still taped to the glass. I had wanted to rip them down, but I had been afraid the tape had been placed to leave something behind. I had used gloves from my desk drawer and had pulled each sheet off slowly. The paper had been warm, like it had just come out of a printer. When I went back upstairs to my office, my email inbox had shown new messages. The sender name had been her name. The address had been close to her old one letter changed. The first subject line had said hello. The email had been short. It had said she had hoped I was sleeping well. It had said she had missed the view from the unit. It had said I had looked tired in the lobby. It had ended with a smile written as a word, not a symbol. It had felt polite. It had also felt like a hand on my neck. I had not answered. I had checked the headers like my lawyer had once shown me. The root had been hidden behind layers of relays. The origin line had been blank. The time stamp had matched a minute before I had opened my inbox. I had felt my stomach tighten when I realized she had timed it, like she had been waiting for me to sit down. A second email had arrived before I could think. The subject had said you should not do that. Inside, she had listed what I had done that morning: gloves, tape, camera footage, corrupted file. She had written it like a grocery list. Then the tone had shifted without warning. The next paragraph had called me cheap. It had said I had cried over money while I had held other people under my thumb. It had accused me of enjoying it. The words had been sharp and personal, like they had been spoken close to my ear. The third email had contained a photo attachment. My finger had hovered over it, but I had still opened it. The image had shown my lobby from inside, taken from the corner near the mailboxes. The angle had been low, as if the camera had been held by someone sitting on the floor. The picture had been taken hours earlier. I had known because the printed screenshots were still on the glass door. In the photo, my own face had been visible as a reflection in the glass, bent and stretched. I had been looking at the tape like I had been scared of it. I had checked the building cameras again right away. Nothing. No one. The hallway feeds had looked normal. The back entrance had not opened. Still, the photo had existed. Someone had been there, or something had made an image that looked like someone had been there. Another email had arrived. Subject line rent. This one had sounded almost kind again. It had said she had been sorry about the mess. It had said she had been angry and had needed to make sure I listened. It had said she had expected me to go online. It had said I had always needed an audience. Then it had offered a deal. If I stopped, she would stop. If I deleted my posts, she would send payment. She had not said how. She had not said when. She had ended by calling me by a nickname only my father had used. My hands had gone numb. That name had not been in any file. It had not been on any account. I had not written it. I had not spoken it in years. I had forwarded everything to my lawyer, then to the officer's email. I had asked if they could trace it. Minutes later, my inbox had shown a reply from her again, as if she had read my forward. The subject had said good. The body had been one sentence. It had said she liked when I asked for help because it proved I could be pushed. Then there had been another attachment, another photo. This one had shown the inside of my office. My desk, my chair, my laptop screen from an angle above my shoulder. The image had been taken while I had been at the desk. I had been frozen, staring at the monitor. The email time stamp had been from 20 minutes earlier when I had been alone with the door locked. I had stood so fast my chair had fallen. I had checked the ceiling tiles. I had checked the smoke detector. I had checked the corners of the bookshelf. I had felt stupid doing it, but I had done it anyway. I had found nothing. When I sat back down, my laptop had been open to my site admin page without me typing the address. The cursor had blinked in an edit box. Words had appeared on their own. one letter at a time, as if an invisible person had been typing through my hands. It had written, "You made this public, so I made you public too." Another email had arrived. This one had not used her name. The sender had been blank. The subject had said, "We can finish it now." The message had been longer than the others. It had moved in a smooth voice, warm in one line and cruel in the next. It had said she had liked my building. It had said she had liked how the locks had made me feel safe. Then it had said the locks had been for tenants, not for me. It had told me which closet in my office held my old settlement file, the one I had paid to keep quiet. It had told me which page had my signature. I had read the last line 3 times before I could breathe. It had said, "I also know what happened before you became a landlord, and I can prove it." I had opened the cabinet in my office and had pulled the old settlement file with shaking hands. Dust had coated the folder edge, but the papers inside had been clean, like someone had handled them recently. I had read the first page and had felt my mouth go dry. The complaint had not been about rent or noise. It had been about safety. A tenant had written that the front door lock had failed and that someone had entered at night. The tenant had said she had reported it twice and had been ignored. I had turned pages fast. The dates had hit me like blows. The complaint had been filed, then withdrawn, then sealed with a settlement agreement. My lawyer at the time had told me it had been cheaper to pay than to fight. He had told me a public record would hurt the building. I had agreed. I had signed. I had told myself I had done what any owner would do. I had not thought about the person who had written the complaint after her name had disappeared from my inbox. Her name had been on the complaint. It had not been the tenant who had fled with my rent. It had been a different woman, different age, different job. But the name had been the same one that had started appearing in comments under my campaign as a rumor. A few strangers had asked why I had not mentioned it. I had assumed they had been guessing. They had not been guessing. I had looked closer at the complaint address line. It had been my building, same unit number as the one my recent tenant had rented. The same unit I had found destroyed and watching. I had felt my skin crawl as if the walls around me had shifted a few inches. I had gone back to the newer tenant's application file. I had spread it out across the desk. I had checked every number again. I had checked the reference name. I had checked the bank statement. Then I had found a small detail I had missed. On the emergency contact line, there had been a name that matched the old complainant. It had been spelled wrong by one letter, but the phone number had been the same as the one in the settlement file. I had stared until my eyes burned. She had not been a random scammer who had run overseas. She had been a person who had come to me with a plan. She had used layered names, but she had left a thread back to that older case like a marker. She had wanted me to pull on it. I had opened my email again and had searched her messages for any hint. I had found one line from months earlier that had seemed harmless at the time. She had asked, in a casual tone, if the building had ever had break-in problems. I had replied with a standard answer. I had written that the building had been secure and that past claims had been resolved. I had not remembered writing it. Now it had looked like a confession. The ruined apartment had made a new kind of sense, and that had scared me more than the damage had. The destruction had not been random. The neat circle of glass, the chair aimed at the door, the camera lens in the ceiling, the missing pages from my lease. Those had not been anger. Those had been stage work. She had built a scene that had forced me to react the way she wanted. I had remembered how fast I had gone online, how I had repeated her name, how I had asked strangers to find her, how I had posted her photo, how I had written that I would keep going until she paid. I had thought I had been hunting her. I had not seen that I had been walking into a box with my own hands. My phone had buzzed again. It had been an email from a journalist I had contacted earlier. The subject had said urgent follow-up. The message had asked for comment on a story they were preparing. They had written that a tenant advocate had provided documents showing I had paid to bury a serious complaint in the past. They had also written that the same advocate had provided screenshots of my campaign as proof of harassment and retaliation. Attached, there had been a link to a shared folder. I had clicked it before I could stop myself. Inside, there had been my posts, my edits, my timeline, and my words, arranged like exhibits. Each file had been labeled with dates and platform names. There had been copies I did not remember uploading, including deleted drafts and early versions. There had been a clip of the live feed from her apartment that framed me as the one surveilling her, not the other way around. At the bottom of the folder, there had been one document with a plain title. It had been a summary written in legal language. It had listed my full name, my building, and my business. It had described my online campaign as a pattern. It had ended with a line that made my throat close. It had said my own posts had already been preserved as evidence. I had stared at the evidence folder until the screen had blurred. I had felt the ground move under my feet, not in the room but under my name. If I had deleted everything, it would have looked like guilt. If I had stayed silent, the story would have grown without me. I had understood that retreat would not end it. It would only hand my voice to her. I had called a private investigator I had once used for a tenant who had vanished with keys. He had answered like he had already known I would call. He had not asked for the full story. He had asked for one thing first. He had asked what I wanted more, truth or control. I had told him I wanted both. He had been quiet for a moment. Then he had told me truth cost time, but control cost more. That afternoon I had met him in a small office that had smelled like old coffee. He had worn plain clothes and had kept his phone face down. He had listened as I described the cameras in the ruined unit, the altered posts, the doxing, and the emails that had known my private name. He had not reacted. He had only asked for dates and copies. When I finished, he had said she had not needed to be near me to hurt me. He had said she had only needed access. Then he had asked who had helped her inside my building. I had not wanted to answer that question. I had been thinking of the two men with tool bags. I had been thinking of the 12 minutes of darkness in my lobby camera feed. I had been thinking of the warm paper taped to my glass door. The investigator had offered to find the people behind the accounts, but he had warned me. He had said this type of person did not travel alone online. He had said I would not be fighting a single tenant. He had said I would be fighting a network that fed on attention. I had also called a reputation management fixer. I had found him through a lawyer friend who had sounded nervous giving me the number. The fixer had spoken in a smooth, careful voice. He had said he could push search results down. He had said he could flood the web with stronger pages. He had said he could get posts removed if I had proof of fraud. When I told him someone had been altering my own site, he had not sounded surprised. He had asked if I had been sure I still owned my name online. He had demanded money up front. He had also demanded a favor later. He had not said what it would be. He had only said I would agree when the time came if I wanted this to end. I had felt sick, but I had paid. I had told myself this was just business, the same way I had once told myself the settlement file had been just business. The investigator and the fixer had worked in parallel, like two knives. The fixer had started pushing a new narrative. He had drafted a clean statement that made me sound reasonable and careful. He had removed emotion and had replaced it with legal words. He had told me to post nothing else from my own accounts. He had told me to let other channels speak for me, so my voice could not be twisted again. The investigator had suggested a trap. He had said she wanted a reaction she could use, so we would give her a reaction that carried a hook. He had asked if she had ever offered a deal. I had told him she had promised payment if I deleted my posts. He had nodded as if that had been the door. We had created a fake settlement offer. It had looked real with formal language and a deadline. It had offered to close the matter if she paid a smaller amount and signed a statement. It had included a link to view the terms. The link had not gone to a normal document. It had gone to a controlled page the investigator had set up. He had said it would record the time, the device type, and the network region of anyone who opened it. I had hated myself for agreeing. It had felt like bait. It had also felt like the first move I had made that was not driven by panic. We had arranged a controlled leak. The fixer had posted a hint on a forum through a burner account. He had written that I had been preparing to settle quietly. He had made it sound like I had been scared. He had mentioned a deadline, just enough to spark curiosity. He had done it in the same tone as the people who had attacked me, so it would blend in. That night I had sat in my office with the lights off and my laptop open. I had watched the tracker page the investigator had given me. The screen had stayed empty for a long time. Each minute had felt like an hour. I had listened for the hum I had heard in the ruined unit. I had heard only the building pipes and my own breath. At 2:17 a.m., a new entry had appeared. Someone had opened the settlement link. The location estimate had loaded a second later, and my mouth had gone dry as I read it. The access had come from a network near Sydney. The investigator had called me at once, his voice low and tight. He had said it had matched the same routing pattern that had touched my accounts before. I had landed in Sydney with my phone already in my hand, like the screen could protect me. The investigator had sent one address and a warning. He had said I should not go alone. I had ignored that. I had told myself I needed to see a real place, not just a map pin and a network trace. My money had been bleeding, my name had been turning toxic, and sleep had stopped being possible. The address had led me to a tired building above a row of closed shops. The stairwell had smelled of sour cleaning liquid. The carpet had been damp. A security camera had hung over the first landing, but its lens had been covered with a small square of tape. The tape had been placed neatly, like someone had done it often. I had climbed anyway, listening for footsteps behind me that never came. The door at the end of the hall had looked ordinary, a cheap deadbolt, a number plate screwed on crooked. There had been no sound inside. I had knocked once and heard nothing. I had knocked again and felt the hollow in my chest deepen. Then a man had opened it a few inches and had looked at my face like he had been comparing it to something he had seen online. I had said I was there about the room. I had used the name the investigator had given me, a fake name tied to the settlement link click. The man had hesitated. His eyes had moved to my phone. He had asked if I had brought cash. I had said yes, but I had not shown it. I had kept my voice calm. I had asked if the woman had been there, the one who used different names. His expression had tightened. He had started to close the door. I had shoved my foot forward before I could think. The door edge had pressed into my shoe. The man had whispered that I had made a mistake. He had looked down the hall, then had pulled the door open wider and had stepped back, like he had decided it was safer to let me in than to fight me in the hallway. The room inside had been small and too clean. The air had smelled like warm plastic, the same smell I had noticed in the ruined Manhattan unit. A desk had been set against the wall. 2 laptops had sat open, screens dimmed. A cheap printer had been on the floor beside a stack of paper. A ring light had leaned in the corner like a broken halo. The curtains had been pinned shut with clips. No sunlight had been allowed in. I had seen the wall first. It had been covered with printed faces, dozens of them, men and women of different ages. Some photos had been passport style. Others had been taken from social accounts. Each face had been labeled with a name and a number. Some labels had included notes like clean credit, no criminal, expired ID, strong accent. Red string had connected a few of them to a handwritten list of cities. New York had been on that list. My mouth had gone dry when I saw my own building address on a sheet taped near the center. The man had watched me read. He had said nothing at first. Then he had told me the room was not his. He had said he only rented it by the week. He had said people came and went, paid extra for quiet, and left behind trash that was not his problem. He had pointed at the printer and had said it had arrived in a box 2 weeks earlier. He had said the box had been addressed to a woman whose name kept changing. I had stepped closer to the desk. One laptop had been logged into a social media dashboard with multiple accounts stacked in a list. Another had been opened to a folder of templates, lease applications, employer letters, bank statement layouts, reference scripts. There had been a spreadsheet with columns for name, region, password, recovery email, and notes. One row had been highlighted. In the notes, it had said Manhattan Landlord loud online. My hands had started shaking again, but I had kept moving, like movement could keep fear from settling. I had seen a camera on the desk, small and black. Beside it, there had been a bag of lenses and tiny tools. The same kind of tools the two men had carried into my lobby. I had picked up a memory card case. It had been labeled with my unit number in thick marker. The man had told me to put it down. His voice had changed. It had sounded frightened now, but not for me. He had said I should leave before someone came back. He had said they did not like questions. He had said they did not like people who thought money made them safe. I had backed toward the door, still staring at the wall of faces. One face near the bottom had been circled in black ink. It had been her, or the version of her I knew. Under it, a line had been written in careful letters. It had said bait. As I stepped into the hallway, my phone had vibrated hard. A voicemail notification had appeared from my New York superintendent. I had played it with my thumb while my other hand gripped the railing. His voice had been a whisper, tight with panic. He had said, "Sir, I am in the hallway outside your apartment. I heard movement inside. Someone is in there right now." I had called my superintendent back from the stairwell in Sydney, and I had heard his breathing more than his words. He had said the door chain on my apartment had been loose, like someone had tested it. He had said he had heard a soft scrape on the floor, slow, like furniture being moved. I had told him to back away and call 911. While he had been talking, my phone had shown a new notification. A login alert. My home network. Someone had been inside my private life again. I had not flown back right away. I had stayed because panic had been what she wanted. I had sent the investigator everything I could from that rented room. Photos of the wall of faces. Close shots of the spreadsheet row that mentioned me. The memory card case labeled with my unit number. I had also sent the fixer a single instruction. I had told him to prepare a final release package, one that could not be dismissed as gossip, and one that did not rely on my words. The investigator had moved faster than I thought possible. Within a day, he had traced payment routes and rental records tied to the room. The crooked door number had matched a chain of short leases paid through the same digital wallet. That wallet had touched my tenants' accounts, the ones that had posted from overseas while watching me in Manhattan. He had obtained a copy of an Australian ID used to rent the room. The face had matched hers. The name had not. Then he had found the real name behind that ID, tied to an older passport number and a history of fraud reports. When I saw the real name on a document, I had felt something close to relief. I had finally been holding a solid thing. It had not stopped the fear, but it had given it an edge. I had told the fixer to publish. The final package had gone out at midnight New York time. It had included the network traces from the settlement link, the Sydney rental records, the ID match, and the spreadsheet screenshots. It had included a clip showing her live post watching me in the ruined apartment, paired with the camera blackout in my lobby and the tool bags. It had included a list of her known aliases with the same recovery email pattern across them. It had been enough for ordinary people to understand, and enough for companies to act. The reaction had been immediate and brutal. A recruiter had posted that a candidate profile had been flagged and withdrawn. A landlord forum had shared a warning list with her real name added. Someone had leaked a bank compliance notice about a frozen account tied to her alias. Her social account had gone dark, then had reappeared with a new handle, then had vanished again within hours. The internet that had turned on me had turned on her too, and it had not needed my help anymore. 2 days later, the investigator had called me with a flat voice. He had said the people behind the rented room had started blaming each other. One had offered names in exchange for leniency. Another had offered money to make it stop. My lawyer had handled the contact, not me. A settlement offer had arrived from an accomplice who had been linked to the camera blackout service and the identity rentals. He had agreed to pay a large part of the damage costs and back rent to avoid deeper charges and public exposure. When the funds had hit my account, I had stared at the number and had felt no joy. It had not felt like recovery. It had felt like blood money. I had returned to New York to find my apartment door intact, but the inside had been wrong. My desk drawers had been slightly open. My closet had smelled like warm plastic. Nothing valuable had been stolen. A single sheet of paper had been left on my kitchen counter. It had been a printout of a search page. At the top, her real name had been there beside the word scam. Directly beneath it, my name had been there beside words I had tried to bury years ago. Safety complaint. Settlement. Sealed records questioned. I had tried to fight that part, but it had already spread. People had linked my campaign to my past, and they had written that I had used public shame to hide private guilt. Even posts meant to defend me had repeated the old claim, keeping it alive. The fixer had pushed down some results, but others had risen in their place, copied, reposted, mirrored. The more I paid, the more the internet had produced new versions. Late that night, I had searched my name again, then hers, then mine once more. The screen had shown the same pattern each time. Her identity scheme had sat beside my buried scandal like they belonged together. I had stared at the results until my eyes had watered, and I had understood the final cost. I had won my revenge, but the internet had made it permanent for both of us, and it had written my name into the same record it had built for her.